Have you ever picked up a jar of honey because the label said pure, raw, or organic? Then you tossed it into your shopping cart without thinking twice. Most of us have. After all, honey has always been one of nature's healthiest foods. It comes from bees. It comes from flowers. So it has to be real. Right? Well, not always. Behind those golden jars sitting on grocery store shelves is a global industry worth billions of dollars. An industry that has been surrounded by years of controversy over sourcing, processing, and labeling. Some honey products have faced lawsuits. Some have been criticized by food investigators. Others have raised questions that consumers still do not know the answers to. And the most surprising part? Many of these products are sold by brands that millions of Americans trust every single day. Welcome back to Golden Menu. Every week we uncover the truth behind the foods filling grocery carts across America. No hype, no fear, just facts that help you become a smarter shopper. Today, we are taking a close look at 10 popular honey brands that have raised concerns over the years. Some have been questioned because of legal disputes, others because of how their honey is processed, and some because experts say shoppers deserve more transparency than they are getting today. To be fair, being named in a lawsuit does not automatically mean a company did something wrong. Every company has the right to defend itself. Our goal is not to decide who is right. Our goal is to understand why the same questions keep appearing throughout the honey industry. More importantly, we want to help you understand what to look for before buying your next jar. Later in this video, we will also show you 2 brands that have built a stronger reputation for transparency. Then we will share a few simple checks you can do at home that may help you better understand the honey already sitting in your kitchen. Some of them take less than a minute. The results may surprise you. So before you buy another jar of honey, stay with us until the end. Because once you understand how the modern honey business really works, you may never look at the honey aisle the same way again. Let us start with a brand that almost everyone in America recognizes. It is affordable, it is easy to find, and millions of families buy it every single week. Number 10. Great Value Honey. Walk into almost any Walmart, and you will find this honey on the shelf. For many shoppers, the decision is simple. The price is low. The packaging looks familiar, and because it is sold under the Walmart store brand, many people assume it has already been held to high-quality standards. That is exactly why this brand deserves a closer look. Over the past several years, Great Value Honey has been mentioned in legal disputes that questioned whether certain honey products were marketed in ways that could mislead consumers. The company has denied wrongdoing. The legal process has followed its own course. But those lawsuits started a much bigger conversation. A conversation that affects almost every jar of honey sold in the United States. How do you actually prove that honey is real? At first, the answer sounds simple. Just test it. But honey is one of the most complex natural foods on the market. Every batch is different. The color changes. The flavor changes. The aroma changes. Even the sugar profile changes depending on which flowers the bees visited. That makes honey much more difficult to verify than many people realize. Scientists often rely on something most consumers never think about: pollen. Those tiny grains naturally found inside raw honey can reveal where the honey came from and whether its claimed origin makes sense. When most of that pollen is removed during processing, tracing the honey becomes much more difficult. That does not automatically mean the honey is far more challenging. For shoppers, that creates a simple problem. You are left trusting the label. And labels are designed to build confidence. Words like pure, natural, raw, organic. Those words immediately create the impression that the product inside the jar is exactly what nature intended. Sometimes that impression is accurate. Sometimes it deserves a closer look. And as you are about to see, Great Value is only the beginning. The next brand has been trusted by American families for more than a century, which makes the questions surrounding it even more surprising. Number 9. Sous Bee Honey. A trusted name facing tough questions. Some brands earn your trust through clever advertising. Others earn it simply by being around for generations. Sous Bee is one of those brands. For many Americans, it is the honey they grew up with. It has been in family kitchens for decades. Parents bought it. Grandparents bought it. Now a new generation continues to buy it without giving the label a second thought. That kind of trust is incredibly valuable. And once people trust a brand, they rarely stop to ask difficult questions. But in recent years, Sous Bee honey also became part of legal disputes involving the way certain honey products were marketed. The company has denied the allegations. The legal process is still part of the public record. Regardless of the outcome, the controversy exposed a much larger issue, one that affects far more than a single company. Where does your honey actually come from? Most shoppers imagine a simple journey. Bees collect nectar. A beekeeper harvests the honey. The honey goes into a jar, then it arrives at the grocery store. In reality, the supply chain can be far more complicated. Some honey travels thousands of miles before reaching American shelves. It can move through multiple countries. It can be blended with honey from different regions. It can be processed by one company, packaged by another, and finally sold under a completely different brand. By the time you buy it, tracing that journey may not be as easy as you think. That is one reason food experts place so much importance on traceability. The more transparent a supply chain is, the easier it becomes to understand exactly where a product originated. The less transparent it is, the more consumers are forced to rely on marketing. And marketing can be incredibly persuasive. A picture of a beehive, a field full of flowers, a smiling beekeeper, a story about tradition. None of those things prove what is inside the jar. They simply create a feeling. That is why experienced food investigators encourage shoppers to look beyond the front label. Ask yourself a few simple questions. Does the company clearly explain where the honey comes from? Does it identify the region? Does it provide independent certification or meaningful traceability? Or does it simply ask you to trust the brand name? Those questions matter much more than beautiful packaging. Because trust should be supported by evidence, not just history. And as we continue down this list, you will notice something interesting. Different companies, different stores, different price points, yet many of them have faced remarkably similar questions. That usually means the issue is much bigger than any single brand. Next, we are looking at a honey product designed to appeal to families with young children. Its packaging feels cheerful, its image feels wholesome, but appearances can sometimes hide a much more complicated story. Number 8. Winnie the Pooh Honey. When packaging becomes part of the product, take a walk down the honey aisle, and one jar immediately stands out. Not because it is the biggest, not because it is the cheapest, because it looks familiar. The smiling bear on the label instantly reminds people of childhood. Parents see it. Anyone reads a single word on the jar, the product already feels trustworthy. That is the power of branding. Companies know that people do not buy with logic alone. They also buy with emotion. A familiar character creates comfort. Comfort creates confidence. And confidence often leads to a purchase. But no matter how friendly the packaging looks, it cannot tell you how the honey was produced. It cannot tell you where it came from. And it certainly cannot tell you how much processing happened before it reached the shelf. That is where independent testing becomes much more valuable than clever marketing. One of the biggest debates surrounding commercial honey is not whether it started as real honey. The bigger question is what happened to it afterward. Many large producers heat honey before bottling it. Heating makes honey easier to pump through factory equipment. It also helps keep the product looking smooth and attractive on store shelves. Then comes filtration. Filtering removes tiny pieces of wax and other natural particles. Some filtration is completely normal. But when filtration becomes extremely aggressive, much of the pollen can also disappear. That matters because pollen is one of the few natural clues that helps identify where honey originally came from. Without it, verifying the source becomes much more difficult. Think about it this way. Imagine buying orange juice with all the orange pulp removed, or buying olive oil with no way to identify where the olives were grown. You would probably want more information before making a decision. The same principle applies to honey. The challenge is that most consumers never think about pollen. Instead, they judge honey by its appearance. If it is bright, if it is perfectly clear, if it pours smoothly, they assume it must be high quality. Ironically, experienced beekeepers often expect the opposite. Real honey changes over time. It may become cloudy. It may crystallize. Its color can vary from one harvest to another. Those natural differences are part of what makes genuine honey unique. Nature does not produce identical batches every single time. Factories often do. That is why appearance alone tells you very little about quality. A beautiful jar is easy to design. A transparent supply chain is much harder to build. As consumers become more informed, many are beginning to look beyond attractive packaging. They want evidence. They want traceability. They want companies that are willing to explain exactly how their products move, from the hive to the grocery shelf. And that brings us to the next brand. It produces honey on an enormous scale, millions of pounds every year. When production reaches that level, maintaining quality becomes a challenge all its own. Number 7. Busy bee honey. When bigger becomes more complicated. Most people believe a bigger company means a better product. It sounds reasonable. A company producing millions of pounds of honey every year should have stricter quality control, more inspectors, better laboratories, better equipment. After all, a business that large has a reputation to protect. But there is another side to the story. As production grows, so does the pressure to keep shelves full. Honey is not manufactured in a factory. It starts with bees. And bees do not work faster just because demand increases. They depend on flowers. They depend on weather. They depend on the seasons. Nature follows its own schedule. Retailers do not. Large supermarket chains expect the same product to be available every week of the year. Consumers expect stable prices. Stores expect consistent supply. Meeting all of those expectations is not always easy. That is why food experts have warned that the global demand for honey has been growing faster than natural honey production in many parts of the world. When demand rises faster than supply, the market changes. Stronger. And unfortunately, so does the incentive for fraud. Food fraud is nothing new. It happens with olive oil. It happens with spices. It happens with seafood. And according to many experts, honey has become one of the most attractive targets. Why? Because honey is surprisingly difficult to verify. Unlike milk or bottled water, every batch of genuine honey is naturally different. One harvest may be light in color. Another may be much darker. One may taste floral. Another may have a rich caramel flavor. That natural variation makes sophisticated adulteration much harder to detect. Modern food fraud is no longer as simple as adding ordinary corn syrup. Today, some fraudulent products are designed to imitate the natural sugar profile of real honey. They are created specifically to avoid simple screening methods. That is why laboratories continue developing more advanced testing technologies every year. As detection improves, the fraud becomes more sophisticated. It is a constant race. Scientists develop better tools. Fraudsters develop better ways to hide. Meanwhile, consumers are left standing in the grocery aisle with almost no information beyond what appears on the label. That is exactly why transparency has become one of the most valuable qualities in today's food industry. The smartest companies do not simply ask consumers to trust them. They help consumers verify their claims. They explain where their honey comes from. They identify the regions. They provide meaningful information about sourcing. Because once shoppers begin asking those questions, attractive packaging is no longer enough. And that brings us to another important point. Many people believe paying more automatically guarantees better quality. Unfortunately, that is not always true. Our next brand proves exactly that. It is one of the most recognizable premium honey brands in the United States. People willingly spend extra money because they believe they are buying something healthier. But does a higher price always mean greater transparency? Let us find out. Number 6. Adulterated honey. The premium image. Walk into almost any supermarket, and you will notice something different about this brand. It does not compete with the cheapest honey on the shelf. Instead, it tries to stand out as the healthier choice. The packaging feels clean. The colors are warm. The words on the label are carefully chosen. Everything about it suggests quality. That is exactly why so many shoppers are willing to pay more. People naturally believe a higher price means a better product. Sometimes that is true. Sometimes it is not. Over the past several years, adulterated honey has also been involved in legal disputes over the way certain honey products were marketed. The company has denied those allegations. As always, the courts are responsible for deciding the legal outcome. But once again, the controversy raises a much bigger question. What should consumers actually expect when they buy premium honey? Many people picture honey flowing directly from the honeycomb into a glass jar. That image is appealing. It is also far from reality. Before honey reaches a grocery store, it usually goes through several stages. It is harvested, it is strained, it is packaged, it is transported. It is stored. Then it is distributed across the country. None of those steps automatically reduce quality. The important question is how much processing happens during that journey. Some manufacturers use heat to improve consistency. Some filter their honey more aggressively than others. Some blend honey from multiple sources to achieve a uniform taste and appearance throughout the year. There is nothing unusual about wanting a consistent product. The problem begins when consumers believe every premium jar has remained exactly as nature produced it. That expectation may not always matter so much. Consumers deserve to understand how their food is produced, not just where it is sold. Not just what the label says, but how it actually arrives inside the jar. Can the company explain its sourcing? Can it identify where the honey originated? Does it provide meaningful information about its supply chain? Those are the questions informed shoppers are beginning to ask, because attractive packaging is easy to create. Trust is much harder to earn. And speaking of trust, our next brand belongs to one of the most respected retailers in the country. Millions of members believe this private label offers outstanding quality at an excellent price. But even one of the most trusted names in retail has not escaped questions about its honey. Let us take a closer look. Number 5. Kirkland Signature Honey. When trust comes with a membership card. For millions of Americans, Costco is more than just a place to shop. It is a place they trust. People buy groceries there because they believe the products have already been carefully selected. And when a product carries the Kirkland signature name, that trust becomes even stronger. Over the years, Kirkland Signature has earned a reputation for offering high quality at a reasonable price. Many shoppers even prefer it over national brands. That is why this next story caught so much attention. In recent years, Kirkland Signature Honey was also included in legal disputes involving the marketing of certain honey products. The company has denied the allegations. As with the other brands on this list, the legal process has taken its own course. But once again, the discussion goes far beyond one lawsuit. It raises a question every shopper should ask. How much do we trust a brand simply because we recognize the name? Think about the last time you shopped at Costco. You probably bought more than you planned. That is part of the experience. Large packages, better value, lower cost per ounce. When you buy honey there, you are not buying a small bottle. You are often buying enough honey to last for months. That means if your assumptions about the product are wrong, You are bringing a much larger quantity into your home. You use it every morning. You add it to your coffee. You mix it into yogurt. You drizzle it over fruit. Without realizing it, one purchase becomes part of your daily routine. That is why transparency becomes even more important. When consumers commit to buying products in bulk, they deserve confidence that those products match their expectations. Food experts often remind consumers that trust should never replace verification. A familiar logo does not prove where a product came from. A respected retailer does not automatically guarantee complete transparency throughout every stage of the supply chain. Good companies understand this. The best companies do not simply ask customers to believe them. They provide evidence. They explain their sourcing. They share meaningful information about how their products move from producers to store shelves. The more information a company is willing to provide, the easier it becomes for consumers to make informed decisions. That is exactly the direction the food industry is moving. People want more than attractive labels. They want answers. Where was this harvested? Who supplied it? How was it processed? Can those claims be verified? Those questions are becoming more important every year, and our next brand shows just how powerful a name can be. It sounds patriotic. It sounds local. It sounds like exactly the kind of honey many shoppers are looking for. But, as you are about to see, names can sometimes create expectations that are much bigger than the information printed on the label. Number 4. American Choice Clover Honey. When a name sells the story. Some products do not need flashy advertising. American Choice is a perfect example. Do all the work. Before you even pick up the jar, the name creates a picture in your mind. American Choice. It sounds local. It sounds dependable. It sounds like honey collected from family farms somewhere in the countryside. That is exactly what makes branding so powerful. A name can influence your decision long before you read the ingredients. But here is something worth remembering. A product name is not evidence. It is marketing. The only thing that matters is whether the company can support the story behind the label. Food investigators have repeatedly pointed out that country of origin has become one of the biggest questions in the honey industry. Many consumers actively look for honey produced in the United States. They believe local honey is fresher. They believe it is easier to trace. They believe it supports American beekeepers. Those are all reasonable expectations. The challenge is that the global honey supply chain has become incredibly complex. Honey may be collected in one country, blended in another, packaged somewhere else, then finally sold under a completely different brand. By the time it reaches the grocery shelf, its journey may have crossed several borders. That is why traceability matters. If a company cannot clearly explain where its honey originated, consumers are forced to rely on assumptions. And assumptions are exactly what marketing is designed to create. This does not mean every imported honey product is low quality. Far from it. Many imported honey products are produced to excellent standards. The issue is transparency. Consumers deserve to know where their food comes from. They should not have to guess. The companies leading the industry today understand this. They recognize that modern shoppers want more than attractive packaging. They want clear information. They want sourcing. They want accountability. Because once trust is lost, it is extremely difficult to earn back. That is why more food companies are beginning to invest in traceable supply chains and independent certification. Consumers are asking smarter questions than ever before, and that is changing the entire market. Our next brand takes a completely different approach. Instead of appealing to patriotism, it appeals to design. Everything about the packaging looks modern, premium, carefully crafted. But as you are about to see, beautiful packaging does not always tell the complete story. Number 3. Archer Farms Honey. Premium packaging. Premium price. But what about transparency? Walk through the grocery store, and you will notice something almost immediately. Some products are designed to grab your attention. Others are designed to earn your trust. Number 2. Kroger Honey. The brand you never thought to question. For many Americans, Kroger is part of everyday life. It is the neighborhood grocery store, the place where people shop every week, the place where they know the layout by heart. Over time, that kind of familiarity creates something powerful. Trust. When shoppers trust the store, they often trust the store brand without asking many questions. After all, if one of the largest grocery chains in the country puts its name on a product, most people assume someone has already done the homework. Someone checked the suppliers. Someone verified the quality. Someone made sure the product matched the label. That assumption is exactly what makes private label products so successful. Consumers are not only buying honey, they are buying confidence. In recent years, Kroger honey also became part of legal discussions surrounding the marketing of certain honey products. The company has denied those allegations. Like the other brands we have discussed today, those legal matters have followed their own process. But once again, they highlight companies provide before asking consumers to trust what is inside the jar. Think about how you shop. Very few people stand in the grocery aisle comparing laboratory reports. Very few people search for independent testing before buying honey. Most of us simply recognize a familiar brand. Then we move on to the next item on the shopping list. That is exactly why transparency matters. Consumers cannot make informed decisions without meaningful information. The companies that truly stand behind their products understand this. They do not rely on reputation alone. They provide details. They explain their sourcing. They make it easier for consumers to understand where the honey originated and how it reached the shelf. That level of openness builds confidence in a way advertising never can, because once consumers begin asking better questions, marketing becomes much less powerful. The question is no longer, does this jar look natural? The question becomes, can this company support the promises printed on the label? That shift is changing the entire food industry. People want facts, not assumptions, evidence, not slogans. And now we arrive at the final brand on today's warning list. It does not have a famous name. It does not spend millions on advertising. In fact, many shoppers barely notice it at all. Yet according to many food experts, it may be one of the biggest risks hiding in plain sight. Number 1. Generic store brand honey. The lowest price often comes with the biggest unknowns. Walk into almost any grocery store, pharmacy, or discount retailer, and you will probably find one. A plain plastic bottle, a simple label, a surprisingly low price. Most people assume honey is honey, so why pay more? That is exactly what these products are counting on. The problem with many generic honey products is not necessarily that they are fake. The problem is how little information they provide. Where was the honey harvested? Which country produced it? Was it blended from multiple sources? How much processing took place before it reached the bottle? Too often, those answers are difficult to find, and when information disappears, uncertainty takes its place. Food experts have been saying the same thing for years. Consumers should never judge honey by price alone. Real honey is not easy to produce. Healthy bee colonies require constant care. Harvests depend on weather. Production depends on the seasons. Every step takes time. If one product costs dramatically less than every other option on the shelf, it is reasonable to ask why. Sometimes there is a perfectly good explanation. Sometimes there is not. The point is not to assume the worst. The point is to ask better questions. Because asking questions is one of the simplest ways to become a smarter shopper. Now that we have finished the warning list, it is time to shift our focus. Not every company deserves criticism. In fact, some honey producers are setting a much higher standard for transparency. They openly explain where their honey comes from. They invest in traceability. They make verification part of the product itself. Coming up next, we are looking at 2 brands that many experts believe are doing exactly that. And after that, we will show you 4 simple tests you can perform at home, using nothing more than the honey already sitting in your kitchen. Archer Farms tried to do both. The packaging looks elegant, the colors feel natural, the label gives the impression of a carefully crafted premium product. Everything about the jar suggests quality before you even open the lid. That is exactly what modern branding is supposed to do. Create confidence, create emotion. Create the feeling that you are making a smarter purchase. For many shoppers, it works. People often assume that paying a little more means buying something. Over the years, Archer Farms honey has also appeared in discussions surrounding honey processing and traceability. Those conversations remind us of an important lesson. The outside of the jar tells only part of the story. The real question is, what happens before the honey ever reaches the shelf? Where did it come from? How many suppliers handled it? How much processing took place? Can the company clearly explain its journey from the hive to your kitchen? Those questions matter much more than attractive packaging. Because modern food companies understand something very well. Consumers make decisions with their eyes first. Research shows that shoppers often decide which product to buy within just a few seconds. That means packaging has only one job: capture attention. Once it does that, many people stop asking questions. That is why food experts encourage consumers to slow down. Do not let the front of the label make the decision for you. Turn the jar around. Read the information. Look for the country of origin. Look for details about sourcing. Look for information that helps explain where the honey actually came from. The more transparent the company is, the easier it becomes to evaluate the product. The less information you can find, the more carefully you should think before buying. Transparency is becoming one of the most valuable qualities in today's food industry. Consumers no longer want clever marketing alone. They want proof. They want companies willing to share real information instead of relying on attractive packaging. And speaking of familiar names, the next brand belongs to one of the largest grocery chains in the United States. Millions of families shop there every week. Many have been buying the same honey for years without ever questioning what is inside the jar. That is about to change. Now let us look at the brands that are doing things differently. After hearing about lawsuits, processing methods, and questions surrounding traceability, you might be wondering something. Is there any honey that consumers can actually feel confident buying? The answer is yes. No company is perfect. But some brands have made transparency a major part of their business instead of treating it like an afterthought. They understand something very important. Modern consumers are no longer satisfied with attractive labels. They want evidence. They want to know where their food comes from. They want to know who produced it. And they want companies that are willing to share that information openly. The first brand has built its entire reputation around exactly that idea. Safe pick number 2. Local Hive Honey. At first glance, Local Hive looks like another premium honey brand. The packaging is simple. The label is clean. Nothing about it feels flashy. But the most important feature is not on the front of the jar. It is on the back. Many Local Hive products include a QR code that allows consumers to learn more about where the honey came from. Instead of simply asking customers to trust the label, the company provides additional information about sourcing and production. That level of transparency is becoming increasingly important in today's food industry, because trust should never depend entirely on marketing. It should be supported by information. Another thing many consumers appreciate is that Local Hive offers different regional varieties. That means the flavor naturally changes depending on where the bees collected nectar. Some jars are lighter, some are darker, some have a stronger floral taste. Others have a richer, earthier flavor. That variation is completely normal. In fact, many beekeepers would tell you that it is exactly what real honey should look like. Nature rarely produces identical results the same year after year. That is sometimes worth asking about. Local Hive embraces those natural differences instead of trying to hide them. It may not be the cheapest honey on the shelf, But many consumers believe the additional transparency makes the higher price worthwhile. Now let us move to our second recommendation. This one is very different. Instead of traditional honey, it focuses on one of the most famous premium varieties in the world. Safe pick number 1. Wetherspoon Raw Manuka Honey. If you have ever shopped for Manuka honey, you already know one thing. It is expensive. Sometimes surprisingly expensive. There is a reason for that. Authentic Manuka honey can only be produced under very specific conditions. It comes from bees collecting nectar from the Manuka plant, which grows naturally in New Zealand. Production is limited. Demand continues to grow. That combination has made Manuka honey one of the most valuable honey products on the market. Unfortunately, it has also become one of the most heavily copied. That is why certification matters so much. Wetherspoon has built its reputation around providing detailed information about the authenticity of its Manuka honey. Instead of relying only on attractive packaging, the company provides grading information that helps consumers better understand what they are buying. For shoppers looking specifically for Manuka honey, that additional transparency can make a significant difference. Does that automatically make it the perfect choice for everyone? Not necessarily. Manuka honey is not inexpensive, and not everyone needs a premium product. But if authenticity is your highest priority, many experts agree that certification and traceability should always come before marketing claims. Now that we have looked at 2 brands that emphasize transparency, there is one more question we need to answer. What if you already have a jar of honey sitting in your kitchen? Is there anything you can do before buying a replacement? The answer might surprise you. You do not need expensive laboratory equipment. You do not need scientific training. There are several simple checks that may help you better understand the honey already sitting in your pantry. Let us go through them one by one. 4 simple ways to evaluate your honey at home. Final thoughts. So what have we learned today? First, not every honey product is the same. 2 jars can look almost identical on the shelf. They can use similar colors, similar words, even similar marketing. Yet they may come from completely different supply chains. Second, attractive packaging is not proof of quality. A beautiful label can catch your attention. It cannot verify where the honey came from. It cannot explain how it was processed. And it certainly cannot replace real transparency. Third, price alone tells only part of the story. The cheapest honey is not always a bad choice. The most expensive honey is not automatically the best. The smartest purchase comes from understanding the product, not simply trusting the marketing. That is why asking a few extra questions can make such a difference. Where was this honey harvested? Can the company clearly explain its sourcing? Does it provide meaningful traceability? Is there independent information that supports the claims on the label? Companies that truly believe in their products are usually happy to answer those questions. The companies that avoid those questions may deserve a closer look. At the end of the day, buying honey should not feel like solving a mystery. Consumers deserve clear information. They deserve honest labeling. And they deserve the ability to make informed choices without having to become food scientists. The good news is that things are beginning to change. As more consumers demand transparency, more companies are responding. They are sharing more information, investing in better traceability. And they are realizing that long-term trust is far more valuable than short-term marketing. Hopefully, that trend continues. Because when companies compete on honesty instead of clever advertising, everyone benefits. Before you leave, take 1 minute and check the honey sitting in your own kitchen. Turn the jar around. Read the label. Look for the country of origin. Look for sourcing information. See how much the company is willing to tell you. You might notice details that you have never paid attention to before. If you found this investigation helpful, let us know in the comments. Which honey brand do you buy most often? Has this video changed the way you think about honey? We would love to hear your experience. And if you enjoy videos that separate facts from marketing, make sure you subscribe to Golden Menu. Every week, We investigate the foods, drinks, and everyday products that millions of people buy without asking questions. Our goal is simple: to help you shop smarter, spend your money more wisely, and make informed decisions backed by evidence instead of advertising. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next investigation. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and as always, shop smarter with Golden Menu. Before we continue, there is something important to understand. None of these methods can tell you with absolute certainty whether a honey product is authentic. Only professional laboratory testing can do that. But these simple checks can help you notice signs that deserve a closer look. Think of them as warning signals, not final proof. The first one is probably the easiest: the water test. Fill a clear glass with cold water. Then add a spoonful of honey. Do not stir it, just watch. Many people believe that real honey immediately sinks to the bottom, while fake honey quickly dissolves. The truth is a little more complicated. Different types of genuine honey behave differently because their moisture content and natural composition can vary. However, if the honey instantly mixes into the water without any resistance, that may be one reason to take a closer look. The water test should never be used by itself. It is simply one piece of the puzzle. The second check is much more reliable. Look for crystallization. Many consumers believe crystallized honey has gone bad. That is one of the biggest myths in the honey industry. In reality, genuine honey naturally crystallizes over time. Some varieties crystallize within weeks. Others may take several months. Temperature also plays an important role. If your honey slowly becomes thicker or develops tiny crystals, that is often completely normal. It does not mean the honey has spoiled. In fact, many beekeepers see crystallization as a natural characteristic of minimally processed honey. If you prefer liquid honey again, simply place the sealed jar in warm water. Avoid boiling temperatures. Gentle heat is usually enough to return it to a smoother texture. The third check takes only a few seconds. Read the label carefully. Do not stop at the front of the jar. Turn it around. Look for information about where the honey was produced. Look for details about the country of origin. See whether the company explains its sourcing. Some brands proudly provide detailed information. Others provide very little. The more transparent the company is, the easier it becomes for consumers to make informed decisions. If the label answers very few questions, that alone may be worth considering before making another purchase. And finally, the fourth check. Think about the price. Beekeeping is not cheap. Healthy bee colonies require constant care. Harvests depend on weather. Extraction takes time. Bottling takes time. Transportation costs money. Every step adds expense. That does not mean every expensive honey is excellent. Every affordable honey is poor quality. But when one product costs dramatically less than nearly every other option on the shelf, it is reasonable to ask why. Sometimes the answer is simple, sometimes it is not. Smart shoppers do not assume. They investigate. Because asking questions is one of the easiest ways to avoid disappointment later. The companies that produce high-quality honey should have no problem explaining where their product came from and how it reached your kitchen. If those answers are difficult to find, you should decide whether that level of uncertainty is acceptable for you and your family. Now let us bring everything together.